Welcome to our Patreon exclusive monthly tutorial for April 2022. Each month, myself or Trey will provide a free tutorial. Sometimes it may be a free lesson that you can download, and other times it will just be a short video clip like this. These monthly tutorials are our way of thanking you for your financial support, and we hope that these will be a blessing to you. Feel free to use any lessons with your students if you have any students, but at the very least, we hope it will bring a deeper love for the spirit of classical education. So the topic today will be on the trivium, because this is a foundational part of the 7 liberal arts, which are the trivium as grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric, and the quadrivium as arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. But we're going to focus just on the trivium for this presentation. So first we ask, what is the trivium? And modern interpretations include stages of learning and as formal subjects. And formal subjects is true to the history of the trivium, but the idea of stages of learning is a relatively new idea. Stages of learning in the neoclassical educator approach speak of the trivium as stages and of tools, and they envision a classical education that provides intellectual tools to children as they grow from unintelligent to intelligent beings. The idea of the trivium as tools or stages, however, would not have occurred to ancient, medieval, or even 19th century educators, because Dorothy Sayers had not yet written her essay, The Lost Tools of Learning, that has had a profound influence on most classical schools today. Before Sayers, no school of education philosophy thought of the trivium as tools or as developmental stages. As for formal subjects, you may primarily know them as a standalone subject in the structure of language for grammar, the art of reasoning and logic, and the art of persuasive speech and writing and rhetoric. Together, they signify that a person has mastered language. This is true and part of the tradition of the liberal arts, but there's more to understanding the trivium than just formal subjects, and we need to look at how it is in fact an art. And in fact, a large struggle for schools that divide the trivium as grammar stages for K-5, logic for 6th through 8th grade, and rhetoric for high school are at a loss for how to incorporate the arts of logic and rhetoric for K through 8. So the historical view, the ancient and medieval educators used 2 words to describe the trivium of grammar, dialectic, or sometimes logic and rhetoric. The first is arts. In Greek, techne, or in Latin, ares. The second word is scientia, a word which denotes not just what we would call today as science, but any definite set of things that you know. It's the easiest way to think of this is that an art is something you do and a science is something you know. Historically, the trivium is both, but for today's purposes, we will focus on the trivium as an art. And the root of this word art is denoted not just in painting, sculpture, and music, but also in any skill, craft, or power. It describes an active engagement with something, not theoretical knowledge as scientia, but about something. Remember, a science is something you know, and an art is something you do. So we're going to look at the trivium as the art of what we're doing, the skills we're building. So we're going to look at how this actively engages both the teacher and the students in any grade and in any subject. The trivium as a way of learning and teaching. So the trivium in Latin means road or way. It's a path. So the trivium is the foundation of all learning, because without language, we cannot learn anything. We must first be able to identify and name things, and we can name things by words and by numbers. The trivium is a way of learning language, and we do this through pictures, words, and numbers. But remember, even numbers are names. So everything starts through language. So think about the subjects that teach using numbers: science and math. Do not limit the trivium as the art of teaching English. It is the art of language. The language can be words, but numbers are also a language. So we can incorporate the arts of the trivium in math, science, and music. In fact, it can be incorporated as a way of teaching and learning anything. If the trivium is a way of instruction, then we can incorporate grammar, logic, and rhetoric in anything. It can become the foundation of our pedagogy, and in fact, it should. So take a look at this picture for a minute. I think this picture really captures the essence of the trivium as a way of instruction and as a way of learning. This is a math, it's called mental arithmetic. And these students are engaging in thinking. They're engaging in even conversation. Little boys on the right are talking about it. And then we have a boy on the left who's asking the teacher a question, or perhaps telling the teacher the answer that he thinks or how the answer was found. And the teacher is engaged, but he's sitting aside in order for the students to have time to contemplate the lesson. So we're going to talk about this. So grammar is the instruction mode where you introduce a new concept or idea. If pedagogy is a way of instruction, then let's look at the three parts to this path of learning. In the grammar way of mode or teaching, we assign a word to something, and then students can apprehend it in such a way that we can engage them with it in order to learn about it. In this grammar mode of thinking and learning, you're giving students material to acquire new information or new knowledge, and it is often attached to previous knowledge. So there can be some scaffolding in the grammar mode of instruction, helping students perhaps remember a lesson from before that would help them to scaffold and build the next level of knowledge. In the dialectic, during the dialectic or logic mode of instruction, the students need to be allowed to have discussions, asking questions, thinking out loud, talking about, working through a problem. This is what we see happening in this picture. This is when teachers give students enough information to wrestle with. This gives students plenty of time to map out in their mind what was just learned. They do this through thinking, asking questions, having discussions, reading and narrating, and Socratic seminars. During this phase, the teacher is really serving as a coach. Rhetoric is the instruction mode, allowing students to create a response. They produce something that shows comprehension. In this mode, the teacher is giving students opportunities to enlarge their understanding by responding through some seminars, projects, deeper discussion questions that are more rhetorical in form. And this allows a more creative expression moment for students so that they can take time to process in their own way and then express what they have understood through any manner of activities. Ultimately, rhetoric as a mode of learning gives students opportunities to improve in eloquence and wisdom, which are important goals for a rhetorician in good communication. But as pedagogy, this approach embodies the spirit of classical education. It allows students to experience the art of thinking, the habits of reflection and communication and expression. It allows teachers to implement the art of language in every subject, thus making the trivium the foundation of good learning. So, and as modes of learning, where integrative faculties of learning are happening for all grades and all ages, let's discuss what this looks like. So in grammar, they are gathering information, they're learning something new by way of observing, experiencing wonder, ordering it, looking for its transcendental nature to discover its truth, goodness, and beauty, developing a poetic imagination towards understanding something, and acquiring a taste for things that are worth imitating. And this is important for students at very young ages to begin being exposed to the things that you want them to have a taste for, the things that are really truly beautiful. In the modes of learning, the students are engaging in the art of gathering and sorting. And in the grammar mode. In the rhetoric mode, they are learning to apply information. Historically, grammar and rhetoric are very closely tied together and intricately work together. Applying information in the rhetoric mode is where you're gathering comprehension. So they're looking at this point for its transcendental nature, which is truth, goodness, and beauty, so that they can imitate and produce that which is good and true and beautiful. Learning how to imitate requires students to refine their affections towards the beautiful. Again, in order to refine those affections towards the beautiful, they have to acquire a taste for them. Defending poetic truth and imitating the true and the good and beautiful is part of the rhetoric mode of learning. In the grammar mode of learning, they're developing a poetic imagination towards understanding, but in the rhetoric, they're actually learning to defend the truth and the good and the beauty of that which is poetic. In the dialectic and logic are really two sides of the same coin. This is where they're internaling information. They're learning through interacting, encompassing wonder-filled and poetic thoughts and ideas, developing the art of dialogue and the art of thinking about things that are worth imitating. And so logic typically will happen more in a math class and dialectic will as well, but the logic mode will happen more in the courses that have answers that are true and right versus perhaps a literature class where the answers can be a little bit more open-ended. Keep in mind that it can be for any subject in any grade. We need not compartmentalize the stages of cognitive development. We do not need to box little ones into a mode of being focused on the poll parrot phase of regurgitating information, because that is what they are good at. If grammar is about gathering information, learning something new, and acquiring a taste for things worth imitating, then we want to be careful to give them things that are beautiful to recite, that we're not just giving them facts to recite, facts that are worth knowing, but we really want to be focusing on giving them beautiful things that are worth knowing so that they can learn how to acquire the taste for beauty. So I want to talk about what the stages of the Trivium look like as perhaps a lesson plan, a typical lesson plan. So when a teacher starts writing a new lesson or lesson plan, which often are required by headmasters, often a lesson plan will include, a warm up or an intro, and then it'll go into the body and then the conclusion of the lesson. And so when a teacher is writing these lesson plans, I want to show how you can look at your lesson plan as Trivium-based. So in starting a lesson plan, be thinking through each part of the Trivium. So in the grammar part, the instruction mode is where you introduce a new concept. So this could work great for your warm-up and intro. And then in the dialectic, the instructional mode, this allows inquiry-based discussion, thinking out loud, talking about working through problems. And this is typically in the body of a lesson. In this section of the lesson, the plan can include multiple activities. It can include lecture, Socratic questioning, imitative writing, discussion, oral reports, small group work, etc. The dialectic mode of the Trivium works great for the body of a lesson, and lecture-based instruction does have its benefits, but be careful not to limit yourself to lecturing the whole class. And when you do prepare a lecture-based lesson plan, be sure to engage students by stopping frequently, asking questions, and having a dialogue with them throughout the lecture. I want to go back a little bit to the warm-up and intro. One of the things that you can do there, like the first 5 or 10 minutes of your class, is you could engage the students by perhaps, like in a math class, asking someone to come up and demonstrate a math solution that's going to bridge perfectly into the new concept. Or you can have a beautiful picture for students to look at that would also bridge into the discussion that you're going to have in the body of the lesson. For instance, a history teacher that's going to discuss the Declaration of Independence could warm up the new topic by having the students silently study the famous painting, The Signing of the Declaration of Independence by John Trumbull. And this would engage the students. And when you have them look at a painting like that, you want to give like 5 minutes of silence for them to really contemplate and ask them what they notice, what they wonder, what does it remind them of, and engage them in a great dialectic discussion within this intro part of the lesson in order to then bridge them to have interest in the discussion about, again, if you were talking about the Declaration of Independence. There are many things that you can do to introduce a new concept and actively engage students to prepare them for the new concept. So these are just a few ideas. When you create a lesson, review it and remember that questions are often better than statements. It's always a good idea to include a few example questions in your lesson plan so that you're armed and ready to ask them, but pay attention to your students, allowing them to ask questions, and take the lesson in the direction where the students are engaging in, because they may actually take it to another level that you weren't anticipating. But you can do that and still stay on the course of the object of your lesson that you wanted to give. Rhetoric is the instruction mode allowing students to create a response. So this is great for your conclusion. It could be homework, could be an assignment, and none of these things need to be happening in one day. Sometimes a lesson may take 3 or 4 days. Allowing the students plenty of time to engage with and connect with the ideas is really important. So more is less is more. Not feeling like you have to go through a lesson in 50 minutes and be done and check off a box and move to the next thing. So I also suggest narration as a really lovely way to conclude a lesson. It is rhetorical. It's a type of rhetorical response. Other rhetorical responses can include having them write or create something that's responsive to show understanding. In math class, you could have students do a problem based on the new concept that you were just teaching them and ask a few students to come to the board to demonstrate how they got their answer. This is also a good way to conclude a lesson and potentially help students who are still struggling with the new concept. To see it presented from another student could allow them to see in a different way of thinking. So include your students in the teaching of your lesson, because if they can teach it, then they know it. Okay, so what is the student role and what is the teacher role during this? So I'm going to just pull them all up. So in presenting, in the student role, while the teacher is engaging with the students and in teaching in the grammar mode of introducing the new concept, the students are acquiring knowledge, they're apprehending this new idea. In the dialectic, where the teacher is allowing inquiry-based discussion, allowing thinking out loud, talking about working through a problem like the boys in that painting. This is where the students are analyzing, mapping, questioning, structuring the idea. And then in rhetorical mode, this is where they're creating and giving them space to do active work. So in presenting these slides, I've just completed the grammar mode of giving you new information. I did this didactically, which is direct instruction or lecture. But this is only one way to teach, and you must know your content well to teach didactically. There are many ways in which you can teach classically, and these are part of a much larger discussion on the various methods that we can incorporate for classical instruction. But my point is that if the curriculum incorporates the trivium as an art, and not as a stage of cognitive development, whereby students are divided into a grammar phase of K through 5, etc., then students are continually building skills, the skills of imitating, the skills of thinking, the skills of communicating. The trivium as an art builds skills for humans to improve in the art of language. This is how we learn at all ages and in all subjects of learning. Once we understand this, we can expand on how the trivium is also a mode of learning and a curriculum. These are ideas that I discuss at professional development sessions for teachers at schools, but I hope that at the very least, this will help create a path by which you can activate the trivium for all students in new learning. Understanding this basic principle can transform an entire school into the beauty of classical education and help both teachers and students flourish to their full potential. So I wanted to also remind you that we have a monthly newsletter, and this month, the newsletter is written out pretty much describing what I just went over. So if you want it in print form, you can visit our website, classicaleducationpodcast.com/consulting, and scroll down and you can sign up for the monthly newsletter. I only send one newsletter a month. I may start sending reminders when the podcast launches every Thursday, but I don't want to overwhelm your emails. So if you haven't yet signed up for our monthly newsletter, you can do so by going to our website. And again, thank you for your support, and we hope to be a blessing, and we thank you so much for your monthly support. We are very, very blessed that you're part of our team and that you believe in the good work that we're doing.